Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Epic Mind Visions. Today I'm here with my very good friend, Jordan Miller. Jordan is a Reiki master, sound healer, polyvibrational therapy expert, and all kinds of other things that she has done in the spiritual and metaphysical and energetic realms. So I wanted to bring her on here and just have a discussion about some of those therapies, some of those modalities, how they help, what they do, what she does in her practice, and what the possibilities are for some of these practices moving forward as they develop and as she learns more about them. She's very, very skilled and knowledgeable, has done multiple trainings, and has been really involved in this stuff for really most of her life. So she's a wealth of information and knowledge. Jordan Miller, welcome to Epic Mind Visions. Thank you for joining me in person, my first in-person podcast.
Thanks, Jeff. Good to
You're
be
welcome.
here.
Yeah.
Yep.
So tell me a little bit about your background. Like, how did you get started in this really the frequency and vibrational work that you do? What certifications did you get? What's the origin story and how did it all come to be?
Uh, so it really just started when I was younger. I would do Reiki on my mom, and I didn't know what I was doing. I just kind of did it and made her feel better. Growing up, she had bipolar, she still does, but she regulated it with diet and meditation and things that people can do on a daily basis to regulate their own body so they don't need medication. Um, but I started there, and then when I moved to Texas in 2017, I found a group of people that um, taught Reiki or did Reiki and then delved into that realm. And I took my first traditional Usui training with Amy Brandon, who now lives in Australia. So I couldn't do my second level with her, but she recommended someone else that lives in Houston. And so I did my level one. I did my 6 months of free Reiki, and you do it on yourself every day. You do it every day, and you Reiki your food, your water, just everything you can possibly think of. You just put that energy into it. And then I did my second level with the Higher Heart Center in Katy. I think they've now moved, but
In Katy, Texas.
yeah, sorry, Katy, Texas.
Mhm.
Um, I think they've now moved, but I did my second level with him, Michael at Higher Heart Center, and then I was called to have a different master teach me the master level of Reiki, Usui, Holy Fire. Usui is a traditional form of Reiki, and then Holy Fire is the William Lee Rand um, Reiki variation that he came up with. Um, and
Yeah.
it's different levels.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not that familiar with Reiki, honestly, but I have actually done a level one, which was probably like a level zero in real terms, you know. It was like a half a day or three hours or something like that. And it was interesting, but I think that it's difficult to really uncover all of the sort of distortions and stresses that we're experiencing in any kind of like a, for me at least, in like a group setting or something like that. Like this morning, Jordan, you did Reiki on my head, and I felt that big time. You know, I was kind of in a state of needing some level of I guess reorientation or redistribution of my energy. And Jordan, gratefully, Jordan just stepped right in with the Reiki, and it was amazing. I literally felt it. And so I think that experience is way different from the experiences that I've had in the past. And I've done some level of self Reiki just in messing around with my crystals and things like that on myself, but it hasn't been anything formal. I don't have formal training. I kind of know a thing or two about it, but I think most of the people out in the audience probably don't know much about it. So, aside from your training, like what's happening in Reiki? Like what is it? Like how do you capture and manipulate this energy, and to what ends? To what, what are we looking for? What kind of results can we find from this?
Well, to start, Reiki energy is source energy. So you're pulling in source energy, and it flows through the crown and then through your hands and to the base of your feet. Which is why you use your hands, and it's called light hand healing.
Hmm.
Um, and people get different perceptions of like what energy you're using. You're not using your own energy. So when you're doing Reiki, you're not supposed to be tired. You're not supposed to be lethargic. You're supposed to be energized. And there's different ways that people practice Reiki. And you can just do it on yourself. Like you don't have to be a master of Reiki to do Reiki. You just put your hands wherever you feel guided and flow Reiki flow. Everyone has that potential to tap into the source energy. It's just, do you have the will, the knowledge, the discipline to actually practice it every day, do it every day?
So that you can become more attuned to it
Mhm,
and notice it in real time. I
mhm.
see.
Yes.
Yeah, my understanding of our energetic beings, we're magnetic, electromagnetic beings, and we have the torus that's going around us, and that's what's creating our aura. So
Mhm.
Reiki would be more like the practitioners tapping into that energetic field, kind of directing it and bringing it into a specific place, and then applying it to the person, whether or themselves or the person that they're working on. Is that correct?
In a easier way to put it, yes. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, well, like I say, I haven't experienced much Reiki, and I haven't experienced something that I really felt certainly as profoundly as I did this morning. And that's why I wanted to just bring you on and just talk about it, because it seems like it's real. Like I believe the frequency and the energy, like I just described, but what kinds of experiences or what kinds of results can we find from doing Reiki and applying this energy in such a concentrated way from the practitioner, I mean?
So my one instance that I have is when I broke my nose in in 2022. What did I do? I did Reiki and I used tuning forks on my face. And even the ENT was like, I've never seen anybody like heal this quickly. And it was like a week I had the stents in my nose. And um, I mean, yes, I was using arnica gel and all the natural other things too, but I was like, no, I'm gonna move past this because I want to be able to breathe through my nose. So it was like 2 full weeks, and then by the end of the month, it was pretty much healed. Um, but again, that goes back to having the discipline and the like the willpower to want to do something. Like,
The intention, putting the
yes,
intention behind it. How many times a day were you doing Reiki on yourself to experience that level of healing?
definitely once in the morning and definitely before bed, but at least a couple times a day.
For how long each session?
At least 15 to 20 minutes, if
Okay.
not an hour, just depending on the day
Hmm.
and how much I wanted to feel that.
So that's a very specific example of how you use Reiki on yourself to potentially heal something that was a traumatic wound. In general, on a day-to-day, how do you experience Reiki on a day-to-day? Do you have time set aside at certain points of the day where you're doing this for a specific period of time, or are you just like randomly like, oh, I feel like I should do some Reiki? I mean, how does that work? Is it structured or unstructured? Like how does it work for you?
For me, it's when I feel guided to do it. Usually I'll Reiki my food. just because you never know what energy was put into the food. Like if you go out to eat, which I don't hardly do, but when I do, I Reiki my food because you don't know what energy was put into that by someone else or
Right.
the way the animal was killed or just whatever energy it was influenced before you got that food. And that goes into like everyday practice where again, if I feel guided to do that, um, I try to do it at least once every day. And then with my work, I do a Reiki meditation once a week. In the morning. People are always like, how do you do a Reiki meditation? And I'm like, well, you sit like a normal meditation and I send Reiki to everyone in the room.
And so you do that at your work. So
Yeah,
you,
I do.
and when people show up for that, what's their experience like? Are they like blown away with some Reiki energy, or like how do they, how do they express what their experience is? Are they like, oh, thank you? Are they just feeling some positive energy, or are they actually feeling some energy, or they, you know what I mean? Like, what does that look like for them?
It
If you
varies.
know, you know.
Oh no, definitely. It varies per person. And I say this in the beginning too. Everyone experiences Reiki energy differently. For some people, it's you can get colors, images. Some people see like loved ones, like dead
Mm.
loved ones. Some people, bring up different things in the body. I've had people cry because it brings out that invoked emotion or things that need to be cleared that are blocked. Um, I've had people at the end where I always do an auric field cleanse over the body at the end of the meditation. And I had one lady, she was like, oh, I felt like my hips unlock.
Hmm.
And it just varies per person, really, just depending on what they need. And the energy flows where it's needed.
Right,
Mhm.
right. Yeah, that's cool. Well, I know in my own meditation, and I feel like I've been able to create a practice over the years where I have the ability to tap into source energy at least consistently. I sit in meditation and it might take me 10 seconds to get there. It might take me an hour and 10 minutes to get there, but inevitably it's like it happens. And I might experience any one of those things that you mentioned, but it's not something that I can snap my fingers and do. But I know many times I sit, I start to meditate, I'm distracted. Takes me a while to get into that state where I'm actually, I guess my field is open enough to have that kind of sensory, that nuanced sensory feeling of it. But sometimes I'll be so distracted, I'll be like, oh, it's just not going to happen tonight. And then I'll give it one more shot, and then boom, it just like hits me and I'm in it, you know?
Mhm.
So it's really kind of unpredictable, but I've been able to tap into it consistently. And I think that that for me is just meditation. I've never considered it to be Reiki, but maybe it's just like that type of tapping into that type of energy or that frequency of energy, and then drawing it into some kind of centered, intentional force and applying that to others, which I haven't done because I'm not a practitioner. Like I don't want to project my stuff onto somebody. So I don't, I'm not trained to be able to separate what's my stuff and their stuff and, like all that. So I don't want to, I wouldn't feel like I was integrity if I were trying to do that to somebody. Um, so that's been my experience of Reiki, but also, you're very, I don't say tuned in, no pun intended there, with a lot of the sound bowls and tuning forks. And I've done tuning forks and we've done tuning forks together. Like, what's your experience with that? And how does that relate? Is it kind of like a stepping stone after Reiki? Then you start, I don't know, like how did that work for you? And what is that all about?
So I did learn Reiki first, and then I went to a sound bath. And I was like, you know what? I want to do this. So what did I do? I went out and I bought a set of sound bowls and I started playing them. And then I started working for a lady at her studio, and she does sound bowls and sound healing. And then I took her class, her course on multi-vibrational tuning. And so she had two courses on that. The first one, you go and you do reflexology on the bottom of the feet. You learn different acupressure points with the Auto 128. And there's John Bulio and Aline McCusack. Their work with frequencies and tuning forks is how the lady I work with made her own modality. And instead of calling it multi-vibrational tuning, I decided to call it polyvibrational tuning because she copyrighted that. So that's hers. So I'm calling it polyvibrational tuning so I don't get in trouble for coining the term.
Right. Is
So,
yours like your application of it is some sort of a tweak or
yeah, I do it differently. So when I do Reiki, I do use tuning forks in the Reiki because I've realized that using those frequencies to bring the energy back to like a home base where your energy is supposed to be. Um like we go do things every day and our bodies and our minds and our lives get out of balance, and the sounds, the frequencies bring all of that back into balance, and that's really important to do. I know most people are like, oh, it's just hullabaloo, that's just like hocus pocus, and it's like when you really think about it, like you're listening to music and you're influenced by, like, you're raging with like Metallica or some Five Finger Death Punch, and you're like, that gets you in like an angry like form because that's what that incites. And then you listen to like the frequency of 528, and that's the love frequency, and you feel it in your heart center, and you bring that balance in when you listen to those types of music and different things. So that's what you're doing with the tuning forks, and every tuning fork does something different. Each one is a frequency, and you can get them in any frequency, and you can get them weighted or unweighted, and the weighted ones are a little more soft and subtle, and then the unweighted ones you work more in the energy field around the body. Weighted ones you work with on the body, and you can get those like little gem feet to go and do different
it's like
acupressure
an
points.
extension with a
Mhm.
crystal on the end of it, so you can get, well, I don't know, maybe you get, what do you get with that?
Well, with the different crystals, you can tap into the normally you would just get a quartz, and that would do a general healing, but you can get labradorite, amethyst, pretty much any crystal, and then that will amplify whatever you're trying to heal,
Hmm.
which is nice. I have an aquamarine and it's like a 4 or 6 millimeter. It's the small one, so you can really get into those little points.
Hmm.
And then I have an 8 millimeter
They're more like
quartz.
acupressure points. They're like
Yeah.
specific points on the body, like
Mhm.
in the meridians with the traditional Chinese medicine, or all of that stuff kind of comes from those similar sources where the nadis, and you're tapping into very specific pressure points on the body, but with this vibration and sound. Right.
Mhm.
Interesting. Well, I mean, for me in my journey with crystals and sound and just natural elements, it just came to me intuitively. Like I started collecting crystals, and then I had been exposed to tuning forks and sound baths and different things like that. And so I got myself a set of tuning forks, but I had, again, no training whatsoever. I'm just doing it. And even in just meditation, it's like having these kinds of releases and clearing. It's like, okay, well, these are the layers of stress that I'm accumulating during the day as an entrepreneur, as I'm doing business, as I'm having, potentially difficult conversations, solving difficult challenges, or coming up with difficult solutions, or finding myself in difficult situations, which I do often, things that I have to think my way out of and work my way out of or over or through, even though I feel pretty centered and grounded in my everyday. Like not very much can like spin me out. Like can happen, not very often. I'm pretty grounded and something, major comes and slaps me in the face. And I'm just like, here we go. Okay. Like, how are we going to do this? But on a subtle body level, like shit's happening. Like that is a layer of stress that's accumulating in my energetic field. And when I drop into meditation in the evenings and I mess around with the different modalities that I've talked about, uh, myofascial release, stretching, tuning forks, all of these things give me an access point. They give me a method to tap into my energetic field and to start to release some of that stress. Because if I didn't do that on a regular basis, then when I am in the weeds and on the battlefield or however you want to, you know, envision that or describe that in my day to day as an entrepreneur, I am going to get spun out because all that's going to be accumulating. And then it's like my cup runs over and I overflow, right? Overflow with stress. So I've been able to create these practices and honor these practices over a period of years in a way that's allowed me to come to some form of center. And I know when I'm off and I can generally stay on, but I get off track sometimes because I'm traveling and doing these other things and I don't have the opportunity to come back and just release that on a regular basis. So the other thing that you said that was interesting to me was I think you said oh shit, I just forgot. The thread disappeared as soon as I wanted to go and grab it. But from an entrepreneurial standpoint and a business standpoint, like, well, I guess what you said was that most people think that Reiki is like hoo hoo or woo woo or whatever. It's like, but then on the other hand, they will acknowledge that stress is one of the most major factors in everyone's life. Like everyone is like, affected by it and everybody is experiencing it on some level. But if you don't have some kind of a practice to release it, then it's just accumulating, and that's going to result in, I mean, we all have distortions, but it's going to result in bigger distortions in your energetic field that could potentially end up manifesting in disease, sickness, and many other things in our system. So what I learned many years ago from a holistic doctor who I followed, I actually worked for him for a while. He gave me the example of like when you when you're when your cat goes out into the alley and gets in a cat fight, he comes back and he shakes it off, and then he lays down by the fire and you scratch his ear and he goes to sleep. We don't do that. We don't shake it off. And there's a video out there of a polar bear and it's being chased by a helicopter and they're doing some research and they need to tag it or whatever they're doing. So they shoot it with a tranquilizer. It goes down. They do what they're going to do. And then when it wakes up, it just starts shaking. It just shakes it off. And that's what animals do instinctively, intuitively. They just shake it off and then they get up and they're like, I don't even know what just happened. I'm just going to go eat some more salmon or whatever they're doing. Right. So we as humans, we don't have that intuitive, like natural practice. I think we have the ability to do it, but we've been programmed otherwise so that stuff is woo woo or that stuff is not like you're just not exposed to it. So you don't get in the habit or in the experience of feeling your emotions, understanding them, and then transmuting them in a way that is going to be healthy. So instead, we stuff it down and those stresses accumulate and then it affects us in much more dire ways and oftentimes sneaks up on us because we haven't been honoring a practice. So there's a lot going on there, but what's your experience with some of that? And is your approach to healing, whether through Reiki or sound, do you have direct experience with people transmuting some of these sicknesses and illnesses, not just like a traumatic event like you had with your nose, but maybe they had cancer or who knows, like something like that? And, what are your thoughts on what I just said?
I don't know about cancer. Cancer is a hard one to work with when you're already that far. Um, and one of the main causes of cancer is anger.
Hmm.
People don't think about like the anger in the body, and um, it just depends on the type of cancer. But anger is one of the main causes for a lot of diseases, a lot of the things that you don't even think about. Like someone cut you off, you got angry. Okay,
Hmm.
but let it go.
It's like those micro, I guess the terminology that's coming to mind is like microaggressions, but
Hmm.
it's not like
Hmm.
I guess it is a microaggression against this person who um, you have interpreted that they've done you wrong because they didn't put their signal on. That happened to us yesterday. Actually. Somebody didn't put their signal on, and she got upset. So it
You
happened,
let it go.
but you let it
Like,
go. But it's like all of
love
us
that.
have these things at a certain level where it's like that bugs the shit out of me,
Yeah.
And so it's like
Yeah,
that
you could
comes
hurt
out.
someone else
Of
by not
course.
doing that one thing. It's like it's just selfishness. People being
Yeah.
selfish.
Yeah, for sure. But it's like our reaction to it is like, okay, well, I've been that guy who was lost and didn't know his way around, and I'm like coming up to what I think is the street that I need to turn on, but I'm not really sure, and I'm not even aware that somebody's right behind me because I've I'm paying too much attention to try to figure out where I'm going, and so I'm not as aware of these other things, and so there's you can frame it however you want, and we all have it. We all have our programming and how our interpretations of things affect us. But the bigger point here is that, you know, if you're getting like truly angry about things, and I've, kind of been with people who I was angry too, I was very angry in my 20s, but I got over it. So there you go. I lowered my expectations of the
That's the
world around
point. As
me.
long as you get over it and you find that balance, you come back to that that balance within yourself, within the meditative practice or source or whatever you want to call it. If you're religious, you can bring religion into it. Like whatever you have to do to bring yourself back to that base
Hmm.
frequency, to hold that, to make sure that you are going to, honor yourself and helping. Like if you once you honor yourself, that helps others honor themselves. And if you do that for yourself, then you can teach other people, hey, this is great. This is, you don't have to feel that way.
Hmm. Right. Well, most of the people who watch this podcast are in the entrepreneurial space, and that's where I'm at. So what I'm trying to do here is to convey what keeps me going, motivation, um, having a sense of groundedness without, stress management, people talk about balanced lifestyle, things like that. As an entrepreneur, that's very difficult. I don't know what a balanced lifestyle is. All I know is that I pay attention to the practices. I honor the practices that I've developed that I know for me personally help me release and reduce stress on a consistent basis. And that's what allows me to show up in my professional life. And then in my personal life, when I have that spaciousness and time to myself, I take advantage of it and I go have fun and I connect with people who inspire me and who are leading me into the next versions of myself so that I can continue to develop personally. And so all of that is like, there's none of this like balance. Well, I'm going to go work really hard today, and then I'm going to come home and I'm going to have a brandy and kick up my slippers and watch some Netflix, some narco on Netflix or something where there's a bunch of guns going on. For some people, that's balance. A lot of people, that's balance. That's like the general like state of where we're at. But that is something that I left behind many years ago, and it's made a huge difference to me. So, in your work, in your estimation and your experience, have you worked with people in the entrepreneurial space? What have you seen, or what do you think is possible in that realm? Just kind of from what I'm describing as my own intuitive experience, but for your more practical, empirical experience, what does that look like?
So we've done corporate sound baths and different things. We've worked with like corporations, and it is an important thing to branch out and be able to work with people in that space because they need it the most.
Mm,
They're doing the 9 to 5, that most people do, and um, not that they necessarily want to do that, but that's what they're doing, and that's what they're going to continue to do.
mm,
So being able to um, give that experience to anyone that is willing to at least try it. And then if they like it, they can come back. Um, or again, one-on-one sessions or virtual. You can do it virtually. And I do distance Reiki for a lot of different people. And it still has the same effectiveness because you're still working with source energy from anywhere in the world.
mm.
Um,
And is that over Zoom or over the phone? Like, how does that work?
you could do both,
Oh,
either
yeah.
or. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I guess from the butterfly's wings metaphor, if you're flapping your wings over here, it doesn't matter where they are. If you're intentionally putting that energy out there,
Mm-hmm.
then it's going to reach them.
Mm-hmm.
That double double split experiment, or no, it's a what is it? Spooky actions at a distance, the Einstein thing, where if you move one particle, you can separate particles by millions of miles or light years or whatever the scientific terminology is, but it's far, it's a long way. And you move one of them, you split the particle, and you move one of them, the other one moves exactly the same way, and it's light years away or whatever the thing is. It's crazy. So when you've done the corporate trainings, what does that look like? You go in and do a in person, some kind of training or
Not
sound bath
necessarily.
or
Yeah, usually it's sound baths,
Mhm.
or we'll have individual corporate people come in for PVTs or MVTs, and then each person, it's really just
Just talking
what.
about polyvibrational
Yes.
therapies. Yeah.
Or polyvibrational tunings. It's
Oh, tuning.
not necessarily a therapy because you have to be a licensed therapist for that word.
Got it. Okay. That's a good distinction to make.
Um, I'm licensed, but I'm not a therapist. Um, um, but it would be like say John Doe needed some pain relief, or they needed just some clearing, some energy cleared, or they had some pain in their body, they didn't know where it was. So if you have pain in the body, you don't know where it is or what's happening, you would probably do a reflexology on the bottom of the feet with the tuning forks. If they had pain in the body and they don't know why or when it started, you would probably do a pain energy tuning, which is working in the energy field, and you're clearing each energy field out, I'd say about 6 to 7 feet out of the from the body, and you move in
Mm.
into
Hmm.
the different um
Different
or
auric layers.
yes,
Hmm.
or energy bodies. So
Yeah,
there's the
energy bodies.
seven
Yeah.
seven energy body tuning, or the violet flame tuning, which is using the UV spectrum of violet light and IR red light. um there's tuning forks for that. There's a tuning fork for everything. But you're clearing each energy field in towards the body, and for each layer, people experience different things. And then throughout the week, because you can only do a tuning a week, like every 7 days, to really feel and get the blockages cleared. Um, So every 7 days you can do one. Sometimes they need them for a month. Sometimes, they only need one. And I tell people, if you feel energetically that you need more, then come back. Otherwise, continue about your time, your life, your whatever you're doing.
Interesting. So from a corporate standpoint, if they're bringing you in for a sound bath, what does that look like? They're trying to accomplish what? They're just trying, it's like a wellness and what am I trying to say? Wellness, health and wellness or well-being for their employees. Is that the way it works out? And are these like bigger companies, medium-sized, smaller companies, all the above? What are we looking at?
I mean, it's usually all of the above.
Okay.
You can either go to, I think we did one at a hotel once, like on the top floor of a hotel. We just did it on the patio of like
Hmm.
this hotel, for like a dozen people. Um, and they just brought in their employees and they laid down on the patio. We brought yoga mats, blankets, the whole 9 yards. And then my boss and I played together the sound bowls. Um, and so that created a whole atmosphere. And then um, everyone left feeling refreshed and rejuvenated, as
Fresh and rejuvenated.
one should after a sound bath.
Yeah.
Even we get the benefits, which is
Of
nice.
course, yeah. Well, I mean, part of the reason why I'm coming here and kind of talking to people like you on this podcast and everything, I feel very lucky because I've been exposed to some of this stuff, just like I say, haphazardly, or I've kind of tripped over it and into it. Like I started out doing yoga about 10 years ago, and I was in Orange County, California, which is kind of woo-woo. It has that element to it. And there are a lot of, really, I guess, modalities that push the boundaries in whatever way. And a lot of that stuff can start out there in those areas of California. And so there were yoga studios that had sound baths included in the membership. And I was exposed to that, and I started going, and it was magic. I felt rejuvenated, after it was over, I would feel like, wow, that was really cool. And I couldn't explain why. Um, I had people around me who were friends and whatnot that I was doing these sound baths with. So that was also, cool to share that experience with people. But I would come out of there and be like, well, when is the next one? Like always, like when is the next one? So I ended up doing, I don't know, probably 100 of these things over the course of a few years from like maybe 2015 to 2018, 19, something like that. And it was like I'm saying, it was rejuvenating magic. And it just felt so amazing. And that's why I knew for me that was something that was helping me heal from past traumas, from my own personal limitations, mental and physical limitations. It was giving me a sense of well-being that I hadn't experienced before. And it wasn't just that. There were a lot of modalities that I was doing that were coming together. But if you've never been exposed to something like this, if you just saw it, if you were walking past a yoga studio and you saw some people playing some sound bowls and you never seen that before, you'd probably just be like, okay, there's some hippies playing some sound bowls, like whatever. But you don't understand that the power of sound and the power of vibration is, well, it's powerful. And so we can tap into that and we can use these modalities like Jordan's saying, the different frequencies are going to um, well, let's back up one step. So to be transmutative energetically, at least the way I understand it, and I am not a therapist either, but the way I understand it is that if you have something trapped in your energetic field, the fastest way, or maybe I don't know if it's the fastest, but a way to access that and transmute it is to match that frequency and then um, do something that's going to shake it out, basically, and transmute it. So what these sound um, implements, bowls, the tuning forks, what they're doing is they're accessing those specific frequencies in your energetic system, and that's uncovering those distortions, which is allowing you to face them. It's bringing it up, triggering you, and then you can face it, and then you can transmute it, right?
Mhm.
So then that becomes less and less of an effect on you because the distortion starts to shrink because you accessed it multiple times over and over, and then it becomes not as much of a thing. And so I heard a saying recently, you can't get triggered if you're not loaded. So what it's doing is it's basically triggering you so that energetic reactive load is dissipating because you're hitting it and pinging it over and over, and then little by little you're like, oh, that thing, yeah, been there, done that, right? And so I've experienced that in my own life. I don't know how many times, but probably thousands over the last 10 years where I've accessed these little thought patterns and frequencies that have been trapped in my body for so long because it's like what happened to me when I was a kid, and like my own limited thoughts on what's possible for myself or my reactions. Everybody should use their blinker at all times, and that's a hard, boundary. And so if somebody doesn't use their blinker, then I get, energetically wound up about that. So that's a thought pattern or a judgment that's trapped in my own system, right? So if I access that enough, then I'll be like, okay, maybe it's just I think they're dumb because, they're putting other people's safety at risk, but I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. Let's put it that way. So maybe when I was 20, I would have lost sleep over it. Maybe it would have woken me up at night. Like, that guy didn't use his blinker, you know? It's just an example, but there's thousands of these things that we have in our minds that are, as we go throughout our day, can uh, upset us
Yeah.
or trigger us, if you want to use that language. So I don't know. Thoughts on that?
Where your intention goes, your energy flows.
There you
So
go.
it's really when it comes down to it, that's the basics.
Hmm.
So if you're putting your energy into something that's not helping you, then it's gonna create that dissonance, that distortion in your body.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I've had judgment around people, especially since I've kind of like gone through an awakening process and realizing that like you mentioned music before, and Metallica in particular, it's like remembering the type of music that I used to listen to, like, oh my God, like that's like, how could I have done that?
This
Like
is
I
is
could
an
couldn't even.
era, everyone goes through phases of music. We've all been there.
Right, but it's like, what was I thinking,
Yeah.
or why was I resonating at that frequency is the bigger question. It's like, what inside me made that make sense? Why, based on the words in some of those songs that are, could be interpreted as negative, and the distortion of the actual sounds, like, how could that be? Like, how was I resonating at such a low frequency? But over the past few years of going to a lot of musical events and different things like that, and seeing how people experience music and sound and vibration by default, especially if you're around some big speakers, you know, um, it's really changed my view. And I have a lot less judgment about it because it's like, okay, and I see like people who I view as spiritual people who listen to some of the most, just the wildest like metal head type stuff, and I'm just like, it just doesn't to me it doesn't align. But in realizing that, maybe that's how they reach these more distorted parts of themselves so that they can
Mhm.
transmute them, and that they're accessing that over that period of time. And like when they go to those states, they're like, okay, I'm opening up my energetic field, and I'm allowing that stuff to kind of transmute. So that's the way I've started to see it, and I don't know if it's true. It's not even a story I'm telling myself. It's just a possibility that I've come to realize, you know. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that? Because I tend to listen to music that is, uplifting most of the time. If it is in any way kind of like distortive or um, doesn't make me feel in, my upper chakra, I generally I don't listen to that stuff. If it's sacral or any kind of like lower chakra type stuff, like it just does not resonate anymore. What do you think?
I have all variations. I listen to all sorts of music. Um, some days I'm like, maybe if I'm working out, I want to listen to something that's gonna like pump me up. But
Hmm.
it doesn't necessarily have to be like motivational music. It could be like
Eye of the Tiger.
some yeah, or some NFX or some EDM or like, even though EDM is really good for dancing and moving your body.
Hmm.
Um, but and it's very true that you can listen to things that cause anger, but that doesn't necessarily have to make you feel angry. It could just bring you back to a time in your life where you did feel that, or you did listen to that music and you want to go back to that point in time and rearrange how you felt and bring that um bring that sense of peace to that point in time, like
Right.
when you're doing like inner child work, or when you're doing shadow work, or you listen to certain things to invoke that, and then you bring the balance into that, or you bring the clarity, or because you
You go
can't have
back to those places,
yeah, you
to
can't have
uncover them so
light
that you can.
without dark.
So that brings us to another thread is like, and we didn't follow it before, it kind of came up a little bit before, but it's like once we get into these states or we've accessed these points, for me, it's like I even said shake it off, like that polar bear or whatever, your doggy dog or your kitty cat, they can stretch it out and kind of shake their bodies, right? It's like that's the way I learned. And I started doing ecstatic dance around the time I was learning about this stuff because I saw that as a modality for me to heal. And so I think that in conjunction with accessing these things, we need to have some kind of physical release so that we can transmute these energies. And I find that in sound baths, or have found that in sound baths for me, obviously I'm just laying there. I'm not doing some physical. Sometimes I'll do some stretching or something in a sound bath, but most of the time I'm just laying there. But I found that if I do that, a lot of times my body will just shake at times, I like maybe a high note or something like that, and my
Mm-hmm.
body will shake. And even like when I feel like my chakras started to release and I started to transmute a lot of those distortions, like in sound baths when the practitioner would hit the high notes, like my jaw would literally like vibrate and my teeth were chattering in a way that I couldn't do it if I were trying, it's just like, it's like, it's wild, but it's like that is sound affecting your system, my system in real time. And that's a really visceral example of how sound and vibration can affect us in real time, so adding that physical release to the access points in these modalities, I think is very important.
And when we're playing these, John Bolio has like different protocols for his tuning forks. So you play like C and G and C and A and C and F and C and G, and that is the protocol for rebalancing the nervous system. So
Mm.
you can take that into the tuning forks, or you can use it, and we use that when our in our sound baths, and you can just create these different protocols for different things that transmute, um, or different things that will help your body nervous system. There's protocols for anxiety, digestive, and just different things that help recalibrate your body back to the way it's supposed to function.
Right. Right. Well, and you mentioned the nervous system. I mean, this is what we've been talking about really is that, these energies are trapped in our nervous system or expressing through our nervous system. And by rebalancing that, we're able to, I guess that's the balance that we're looking for is that we're able to function in our own worldly reality in a much more grounded way because we're not so distractive out here or we're not so reactive to what stimulus is coming at us, right? It's like for me, it's like once I had been through some really serious things in my life, it's like, okay, well, nothing's as bad as that. Like, okay, come at me, like whatever. You can't. I'm unfuckwithable
Yeah.
in some ways. This is in my mind. Of course, there's things that could fuck with me, but it's like for the most part, the things that most people are dealing with that are fucking with them are not fucking with me because I don't care. I've been there. I've done that. Those things aren't important to me. So this story I'm telling myself is that these things aren't important. So it's like you said, where your intention goes, your energy flows, and my energy just doesn't go to those things. So I think that's kind of where the magic happens is in the transmutation because that clears your energetic field, ultimately your nervous system, so that it can be more balanced, less reactive. And then you have the real spaciousness in your energy field to go and create and to manifest the things in your life that you actually want instead of being like so fearful, right? You
Mhm.
can't be in fear and gratitude at the
Mhm.
same time. So if you're not grateful for what you already have, as the saying goes, you're not going to get anything else. So if you're just in fear all the time based on these energies and distortions and triggers that you have, then there's no way that you're going to be in the kind of gratitude that's going to allow you to create and make the kind of impact in the world that's going to come back to you. So all of this stuff for me has been super important along my entrepreneurial journey. And I just see infinite possibilities to continue to heal, can continue to create and grow and develop and evolve over time. But it takes discipline. It
Mhm.
takes responsibility, taking responsibility for
Mhm.
my own healing and my own nervous system and doing the things like I'm gonna sign up for that sound bath tonight. I'm gonna go and buy myself some tuning forks and do some tuning fork healing on myself, or find a practitioner like Jordan who can do it for me or with me. And I'm gonna honor that healing process that I need to have so that I can get to where I want to be.
Even just taking 5 minutes out of your day to breathe with yourself. Like
There
it
you
doesn't
go.
doesn't take much, just 5 minutes. Like people are like, I don't have time. I'm like, you can take 5 minutes.
Yeah, it doesn't take much to get
You
started. I found that it's like if you want like real healing, like it does take time and effort and dedication, but it's like it becomes a lifestyle because it's like these things start to feel good to me,
hmm
and the things that are not moving me forward don't feel good to me anymore. So it's just like I'm replacing it. It's not like I don't have time. Why don't you have time? Well, because I got to go watch the Bears game at the bar because they got $2 Coors
have
Light.
to, or
Yeah, and it's like, well, yeah, because that's where all my friends are, and because that's what I love the Bears, or whatever your team is. And so then it's like, well, once for me, when I started to reprogram and I was never like a big sports fan, but it's just an example. And once I started to reprogram from that kind of an approach to life, then it's like, well, who are these people I'm spending all this time with? And I'm drinking alcohol that's one of the lowest vibration, liquids you could put in your body.
Mhm.
And I'm watching sports. A lot of people say, well, sports, like it's competitive and people are like reaching their peak potential athletically and all this. Cool. Well, find a positive way to have that in your life, and it's like, I just have a lot more respect for somebody who, no matter what age they're in their age bracket, local community team, and they're out there getting exercise and actually playing, they're on the field, and then they go watch a game, cool, you know. But if they're just like armchair quarterbacks and then they haven't even ran around the block in 25 years, I don't know. It seems like there's just a lot more opportunity for those types of people to learn and grow and to be more, uh, accessing the physical and mental and emotional potential that they have that we all have within ourselves. And it's just to me, it's like you're wasting your potential if you're out there doing just unintentionally drinking because that's your default mode or that's your default action. And all of your friends are doing the same.
You're just being haphazard with your
Yeah,
energy.
it's being, yeah, it's they talk about leaky energy. I don't know, I don't even know what that means really, but it's like that's like a fire hose waste to me because
Hmm.
if you directed that same or if one directed that same energy towards creating a real solid practice for themselves that were going to allow them to heal over the long term, then at least in my experience, my life has become infinitely better. And I was kind of a shit show for a long time. So, I'm living proof. So that's what it is. Was there anything as we close up here, Jordan? What did we miss in this conversation? What would you like to relay or say or convey that we haven't hit on?
um, I'll bring it back to the feeling of fear, the fear. Um, that's probably one of the most used forks that I have that I've used in a lot of people's energy fields is the UT, the fear fork. And it's not necessarily like normal fear that people think of. It could be anything. Like you have some sort of, I had one person, she was very dead set on not having children. And, she had that fear of, oh, if I do this, like if I ever do this, this is what's going to happen. And then I did like 3 sessions on her. And then she was like, I have this weird inkling to like, where I had that fear of having kids, but now I'm like, kind of, I've moved past that. I've transmuted that feeling of fear of having children. And now it's like, I could potentially see myself one day. And so it's just a process. It's um working through those blockages, and it's a process, and
Mhm.
everything's a process,
Yeah,
and it just
100%.
it starts somewhere. You just have to start somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, that was me. I started, as I've mentioned on this same story on other podcasts, is I was a mess in my life. My life was a complete shit show, and my mentor challenged me to do yoga. And at the time, around probably 2013, 14, I didn't even, I was so disconnected, I couldn't even call it yoga. I called it stretching on a mat because it seemed a lot more palatable to me. And here I am 10, 12 years later, like it was the most life-changing and transformational experience that I had. And it's just one thing has led to the other. So it's been a ride, and I wouldn't have it any other way. It's amazing. So Jordan, thank you so much for coming on today. I adore you. I appreciate you sharing all this information about the deeper aspects of the modalities that you've learned and that you work with people on for their healing. I appreciate you sharing those with me personally and us sharing our own practices together. It's amazing to have a partner to share practices with. I love that so much. So I foresee as we move forward and experience new things together that we'll have another chat like this on another episode of this podcast, perhaps in the future, and we can dive into more specific things. Now that we've laid the foundation and groundwork for the kind of work that you do and the kind of experiences that I've had positive all the way. So thank you so much for joining us. How can people reach you if they want to find you online or they would like to experience some of your healing magic, whether that be for Reiki or sound baths or just contact you for private healing or whatever? Like where you at? What's your handle?
Instagram is probably the easiest option because it has the link tree to my website and all of the things that I do. And that's Gem Studios.
Gem Studios. Where does the gem come from?
It's my initials,
It's her
Jordan
initials.
Elizabeth Miller.
So cute. All right. Gem Studios on Instagram. It's got a link tree there for you. And I'll drop that into the description for this podcast. And we will look forward to seeing you guys on the next episode of Epic Mind Visions. Thanks for joining us. Take care. Peace.